Background checks for your local church, the why, when, and how to do it. Coming up here on the Better Sundays podcast at reachkeep.com. Welcome to the Better Sundays podcast. Focused, practical, and usable advice for church leaders looking to reach new young families and impact their community. Well, howdy, folks. It is good to be back with you here on our podcast and on our YouTube channel doing our security stuff that we've been doing. I had to take a week off there, but I am back and glad to have a few things up and running here again. I am really glad to be talking about the topic of security and safety in our churches. It is one of those things of paramount. I mean, way up there. We got to work on some of that stuff. Obviously, we got to pray and preach and, honor the Bible and sing songs and fellowship. There's a lot of things, but tied into all that is making sure that your church is safe and secure. And one of those things is doing background checks on the people that happen to be there. A lot of different volunteers can show up. A lot of people can walk into a church for many, many reasons, and you want to know something about the background on them. So we're going to talk about why we do them. We're going to give you kind of when or what triggers it, and then we're going to kind of give you the how. Now, I want to, at the end, I want to give you kind of the really biggie thing about background checks, which will kind of take us into our next podcast that we're doing on security awareness, which is super important. But I want to do that, give you that at the end, and then also I'm going to share with you exactly what we do as far as triggering background checks at our church, and we're a smaller rural church. City church is different, larger church is different, city church is different, but we're going to give you what we have been doing and what our practice is. In other words, what triggers a background check. So anyway, if you're first time here, I'm Mike Holmes. I'm the interim pastor here at Sinclair Baptist Church in central Wyoming. I was a founding pastor many years ago as a church plant, and recently got asked to come back and do some teaching and training here as we search for a new pastor. So delighted to be able to help the local church find the pastor that they need. Very excited about the opportunity to keep up with my Reach Keep things and spent a lot of time traveling. I was just in a church in New England last week doing assessment and training. I've got one in the Denver metro area coming up this week, and then off to Ohio and North Carolina, a few other places. So it's a thrill to be able to serve the many, many churches around the country. And if we can give your church a hand, please give us a call. We'll see if we can kind of work you into the schedule and see what we can do to help out. Let's talk about background checks and why we are. First of all, what is a background check? And it is sort of, I guess it's the idea that a legal entity of someone else other than you goes and looks into somebody else. I mean, I look at everybody. I trust everybody. I'm not sure about you, but I'm just kind of like, yeah, you look like a good guy to me. Let's go to work, And that's not always good. We do need to check the backgrounds, and there's a lot of different ways to do that. We'll touch on that in a moment. But it is just where someone else is doing it, a legal entity, your insurance company, the law enforcement is doing that. Let's talk about the why portion here first off. And I think the main reason is we all know that there's a lot of people that can have secret problems. I mean, things that have gone on that we don't know about, and those could affect our sheep. We are responsible, we're diligent about our sheep, our flocks. We need to make sure that they're safe and secure, and our children and the vulnerableness of people coming into a church situation, we need to make sure they're safe. And so we need to take time to make sure we're really the staff people that are there in contact with children or finances or, some levels of leadership, that we don't have some kind of secret, hidden something underneath that. And we do background checks to reveal some of that if that's something that we would need to know about. We also do it because of the due diligence side of thing. And if you ever, God forbid, but you have some kind of major problem, whatever, and you're in a courtroom, some lawyer on the other side is going to say, or a judge, did you do background checks? And you want to say, yes, we did everything we could. This guy, gal, whoever flew under the radar and tricked us and fooled us, if something happened, but you want to say we looked into it the best that we could. So it's very important for us to look and make sure that there's not something there. Now, obviously, background checks don't get into all sorts of, what we call sin issues, but they do get into felonies and, criminal behavior, things of that nature, and that's the best that we can do in some cases. So we want to do that, make sure that there's some felons or whatever that, child abuse type things that have been involved, that we know that. Now, we have found that sometimes when we ask someone or tell somebody, hey, if you're going to work here, we're going to do a background check on you, and they say, no, thank you, and then they leave. And I hate to say it that way, but that we've had that happen, and they've said, I'm out of here, and they're gone. I think you're protecting yourself that way. We had a guy once that had worked for a couple of weeks and kind of helped out. We were kind of working them into a kind of a security situation, came recommended by someone else and was there for a while. The moment we mentioned background checks, poof, never saw his face again. And I'm just kind of glad that we did that. That's the red flag thing that you want to do. So background checks can do that. That is one of the reasons that we do it. We want to find and eliminate any unnecessary threats or, something that could come to our children. And we want to do, what we call due diligence and do this. So make sure that you are doing background checks. Now, second thing here is when do we do them, or what triggers and kind of makes that happen, because that's a very, very important thing. Many people do background checks when people are involved in the nursery, let's get the thumb up here, nursery, children, teens, okay? Anything that has to do with underage people, you probably should have some type of background check that you're doing with those people. If you have them involved with finances, they're counting an offering, taking an offering, something along that line, you probably ought to do a background check. If they're in some type of trusted position, they're like an usher or security or a deacon or some type of administrative leadership, you probably need to do a background check on them. Now, I told you we'd tell you what our practice is. Our practice is probably a little bit different than some churches, and that is because we are in the state penitentiary for the maximum security penitentiary, just a few miles from here, not too far. We have a lot of people with incarceration history. They move into the community to be with their loved ones, and there's just always a higher level of that type of activity. And so our position now is that when somebody joins the church, when they become a member and go through our membership class, and we have a membership seminar video. If you've never seen that, I'll try to put a link here for it, but look up under ReachKeep Membership 101. You'll see how we do our membership class. Anytime somebody becomes a member, we just go ahead and do a background check right there, because they're going to be involved, and we really believe service is a portion of discipleship, and so they're going to be involved with kids, they're going to be involved with finances, leadership, whatever. Well, almost everybody, with the exception of a few, very elderly type people, are going to be involved in some type of leadership type position. And so we do background checks. And when they're filling out their application to be a member and going through and we're getting all their data, we hand them a sheet of paper, and it is the release form so that we can do the background check. And they put their driver's license, social security number, a few other things like that. Last couple places they live, so we can chase all that down. So that is what triggers it. Now, let me talk to the how thing here and just kind of get to this. And sort of, let's start with kind of how soon, okay? Someone comes in, joins your church just right off the bat, or they're there for a week or two. Are you doing that? We have found that there are many people who come to our church and want to possibly be involved in children's ministry, and they came from another church or they have some recommendations. We have them go as a visitor into our children's ministry, and they're not running anything, they're not teaching anything, they're just there as kind of what we call a shadow, and they're kind of with the teacher the entire time, kind of seeing how it works, seeing how the junior church works and some of that. We allow those people to go in. They're under, of course, heavy supervision, and they do not have to have a background check. So we don't trigger it with those people, nor do we trigger it with just a parent that would be in the children's ministry for maybe a 2 or 3 weeks. And we have had that several times where a child is a little squirmish about being with other kids, or there's maybe a special needs situation and the parent wants to kind of be with their kids in there. As long as there's good supervision, we've had parents in there for 2 or 3, maybe in 4 weeks without a background check. But once they kind of go past that threshold and they start to become kind of a helper, all right, then we say, hey, we need to get you through our membership class, and we need to get you background check. So that's kind of how the how soon thing goes on there. So parents, if they're supervised, or temporary workers, 2 or 3 weeks, we let that go. Now, how do you do background checks? And this is probably the easiest thing for me to say is Google it, okay? The easiest way that we have done it is with our church insurance company, and there are many, many insurance companies that do this. Almost all of your church insurance companies now offer a recommended background check procedure, because they want you to be doing this for their purposes, to make sure they're safe and sound so they don't get sued. They want to make sure you're doing that. So number one, go to your insurance company and see what their requirements are, see what their recommendations are. That's the best way to do that. And you can get background checks with someone that's not your insurance company. So you can look up like Guide One or Church Mutual, or some of these larger companies, and see what they recommend and what they charge for background checks. And you can still do them with one of those companies. They'll kind of funnel you the right direction. The other way we have done background checks is with law enforcement. And if you have a local law enforcement person in your church and they have a way of doing it, sometimes these, both online and with law enforcement, they do cost some money, and it is worth it to put the money into that. So make sure you're budgeted, that you're going to be putting money into background checks of people. And then, of course, part of the how is, what do you do once you get one back? And we review the background check and go through it. Our administrative team or our deacons kind of go through it and see if there's anything on there. I often ask people when we're doing a background check, I just say, hey, is there anything that's going to show up here that you'd want us to know about? And we have several people say, years ago I did XYZ, and they'll let you know. They'll tell you what it is, and then, of course, you'll get the verification of it and kind of find out what it was. And depending on what it is and how long ago, you can make the decision whether that person is still involved. We had a lady once that wrote a check, like a $50, $100 bad check once. Somebody pressed charge. It was a really ugly thing, but it was like 25 years ago, and she has a very clean record since then. And we talked to her and said, well, hey, we obviously don't want you doing that again, but yes, you can work and be involved in our children's ministry. So you need to make the decisions on how and what all that happens. We did have a lady once. She said, oh, yeah, you're going to see something. And when we got it, we saw it, and it was she was involved in like a high-speed chase and illusion of the police, or whatever that word is called, where you try to get away from the police. That was marked on there. So she told us a story, and it was quite funny, and it was quite a few years ago. And we had her involved. She was actually only doing like refreshment type work, so we didn't really have a problem with that. So the big thing, though, here's the big thing, and this really takes us into the next podcast, which you're going to need to watch. It's not recorded yet, but you'll need to watch it. We'll link all these together eventually, is what we call awareness, security awareness, and I'll spend a lot more time on this in the next podcast, so make sure you go to this. But if you're doing background checks, make sure you let your congregation know you're doing background checks. In other words, you can say that. You can say, hey, folks, before we get started the sermon day, I just want to let you know we love your kids, and we try to give them good time in Sunday school and teach them good stuff. But there's another thing that we do that you may not be aware of. We do background checks on all of our workers that are involved with your children to make sure that they are safe and secure. So rest assured, things are safe here at our local church. So you need to say those type of things, and I'll spend a lot more time in our next podcast doing that. So anyway, thank you so much for being with us. If this is good, thumbs up, hit the like button, and of course subscribe. And then you need to go back. This is number 4 of 10, I think it is, or 5 of 10. You need to go back and watch the other ones, because we deal with all the other aspects, and of course catch the rest of them. But there are many aspects to the what we call security in your local church. So if you go to the first one, you'll get the list of all 9 of the major topics that we cover, and make sure that you catch every one of those and share them with your friends. And thanks for joining us here at the Better Sundays podcast at reachkeep.com.